The atmosphere at the company gala was electric, filled with the buzz of conversations and clinking glasses. Everyone was dressed in their finest, celebrating the successes of the year, and Sarah, mingling among the crowd, felt a surge of pride and optimism. The evening was perfect for networking, a chance to showcase her startup to potential investors who were usually too busy to notice. Lost in the crowd, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she found herself face to face with Mr. Carlton, her husband's boss. Mr. Carlton, with his impeccable suit and commanding presence, had always been a figure of influence at these gatherings. His smile was warm, yet there was a sharpness in his eyes that suggested he was always thinking, always planning. Sarah had always respected him, aware of the power he wielded within the company and beyond. Tonight, however, his attention was on her, and as he led her away from the noisy crowd to a quieter corner, she felt a mix of curiosity and nervousness. The offer came unexpectedly. Mr. Carlton, in a tone that mixed business with a hint of personal interest, began to outline a proposal that he believed would be beneficial for both of them. He spoke of her startup, how he had been following its progress with interest, and believed it had potential. Then he laid out his vision: financial backing from him, exclusive partnerships that could propel her business into new markets, and resources that only someone of his standing could offer. The proposal was more than generous. It was a lifeline that could secure her business's future. Sarah listened, her mind racing with the possibilities. This was the break she had been hoping for, the kind of support that could transform her small enterprise into a significant player in the industry. Mr. Carlton spoke of synergy, of mutual benefits, of a partnership that would leverage both his influence and her innovation. The potential for growth was enormous, and as he detailed the numbers, the expansion plans, and the level of access she would have to industry leaders, it all seemed like a dream coming true. There was a catch, of course, though it was not immediately obvious. Mr. Carlton made it seem as though the arrangement was straightforward, with no strings attached. His company would invest in her startup in exchange for a minority stake, enough to justify the investment, but not enough to take control. He assured her of her autonomy, that she would remain the decision-maker, that his role would be purely supportive. It was everything Sarah had hoped for, presented on a silver platter. Yet, as the conversation continued, Sarah couldn't shake off a nagging feeling of unease. It was all too perfect, too convenient. Mr. Carlton's assurances were meant to be comforting, but they also hinted at the leverage he would hold. The control might be minimal on paper, but his influence could extend far beyond what the contract stipulated. How much would he actually intervene? Would he respect the boundaries, or would he use this partnership to steer her company according to his vision? Despite these doubts, the excitement of the moment, the music softly playing in the background, and the promise of a secured future clouded her judgment. Sarah found herself nodding, agreeing to consider the proposal seriously. Mr. Carlton's smile widened, and he clinked his glass against hers, a silent celebration of a deal tentatively agreed upon. As the gala continued, Sarah tried to mingle and enjoy the festivities, but her thoughts kept returning to that conversation. The potential for growth, the financial security, the doors that could open for her, these were all incredibly enticing. Yet each time she replayed Mr. Carlton's words, she questioned her initial excitement. Was she being too cautious, or was she right to suspect that the offer was not as straightforward as it seemed? The evening wound down, and as she drove home, the weight of the decision pressed on her. This offer could elevate her business to levels she had dreamed of, but it could also entangle her in obligations that might compromise her vision and control. The excitement of the potential deal mixed with a fear of the unknown, leaving her to wonder whether she was about to make the best decision of her professional life, or a mistake that she might deeply regret. This was her chance to step into the spotlight. But at what cost? The gala had started as a celebration, an event to relish the success and promise of the future. But for Sarah, it had turned into a night of profound decisions, a moment that demanded careful consideration and possibly bold action. As she parked her car and headed inside, the night air felt cooler, and the once clear path ahead seemed shrouded in mist. The offer was made, The potential was immense, but the decision was hers to make, and it would require more than just business acumen. It would require a deep understanding of her own values and the future she truly wanted to build. After the gala, the conversation about Mr. Carlton's proposal became the focal point of dinner discussions between Sarah and Tom. Tom, ever supportive and optimistic about the future, saw the offer as a golden opportunity. He believed in Sarah's capability and Mr. Carlton's influence, seeing them as a dynamic combination that could catapult their financial and professional lives forward. Together, they dreamed of the success that seemed just within reach, talking late into the night about the possibilities of new markets and financial stability. The next day, Sarah arranged to meet with Mr. Carlton to go over the contract. As she sat across from him in the plush office, the document laid out neatly in front of her. A mix of nervousness and exhilaration filled the room. Mr. Carlton went through the contract, pointing out the key areas of investment and the clauses that outlined the minority stake his company would take. On paper, everything looked fair and promising. The figures were more than she had hoped for, and Mr. Carlton's reassurances echoed in her ears, painting a picture of a partnership that respected her vision and autonomy. As they discussed the details, Mr. Carlton's demeanor was confident and reassuring. He spoke about the future with certainty, as if success was guaranteed. The contract outlined not just the financial investment, but also the access to resources that Sarah's startup desperately needed. It was a comprehensive package, one that covered marketing, distribution, and even international exposure, areas where her small team had struggled. But amidst the excitement, a small part of Sarah hesitated. The legal language of the contract was clear, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she might be missing something. However, with Tom's enthusiastic support and Mr. Carlton's persuasive assurance, she pushed her doubts aside. This was the break they had been waiting for, and sometimes taking a leap of faith was necessary. With a deep breath, Sarah signed the contract, her signature a firm line on the page. As she did, Mr. Carlton's smile broadened, and he extended his hand across the table. The handshake was firm, sealing a deal that felt like the beginning of a new era for Sarah's business. As they shook hands, Mr. Carlton assured her once more that this was the start of something great. The weight of his gaze and the power of his presence left no room for doubt in that moment. Sarah left the meeting feeling like she had just stepped onto a new path that would lead her startup to heights she had only imagined. On the drive home, the initial rush of signing the deal began to mingle with a whirl of thoughts about the future. She imagined expanding her team, moving into a larger office, and finally pushing her products into markets that had previously seemed out of reach. She pictured the upcoming business trips, the industry conferences, and the potential headlines in business magazines. The promise of what could come was exhilarating. However, as the evening set in and the quiet of her home office surrounded her, Sarah began to reflect more deeply on what she had committed to. The document she had signed wasn't just a promise of money, it was a commitment that tied her decisions to someone else's vision and control, even if just partially. The minority stake might not give Mr. Carlton major control, but it gave him enough to influence significant decisions. What would happen if their visions clashed, or if his ideas of growth conflicted with her business ethics? Tom noticed her contemplative mood at dinner and reassured her they had made the right decision. He spoke passionately about the doors that would now open and how rare such opportunities were. His words were meant to comfort her, but they also echoed the weight of expectation now resting on her shoulders. The partnership wasn't just with Mr. Carlton, but with everyone who believed in her team, her family, and perhaps most importantly, herself. That night, Sarah lay awake long after Tom had fallen asleep, the moon casting a soft glow across the room. The silence gave way to a cacophony of thoughts about all that was at stake. The business was her brainchild, nurtured from its inception to what it had become. It was more than just a company. It was a part of who she was, a testament to her dedication and dreams. As much as the contract represented an incredible opportunity, it also symbolized a handing over of part of her creation to someone else. This partnership with Mr. Carlton was a gamble, one that could lead to unprecedented success or could challenge the very core of her business's identity. As Sarah finally drifted to sleep, the document she had signed earlier seemed both a sail catching the wind and an anchor that might yet pull her in directions she had never intended to go. The future was uncertain, and while the thrill of potential success was intoxicating, the fear of losing her autonomy was a quiet current in the back of her mind, steady and persistent. The surge of excitement was palpable as Sarah watched her business begin to transform under the new partnership. The influx of funds and resources propelled her operations forward at a pace she had never before experienced. Orders were up, her staff was expanding, and her products were beginning to garner the kind of attention that had only been a dream a few months ago. There was a palpable buzz in the office. New clients signed on, and her brand was becoming a known name in industry circles. The growth was exhilarating, a sign that all her hard work and risks were finally paying off. However, with this rapid expansion came a set of challenges that Sarah hadn't fully anticipated. The structure of her small company began to strain under the demands of increased production and a larger workforce. Systems that worked well when she was a startup now needed serious overhauling to cope with the scale of operations. Deadlines became tighter, the workdays longer, and the small, family-like atmosphere of her team started to give way to the pressures of a fast-scaling enterprise. It was during this time of critical transition that Mr. Carlton began to take a more hands-on approach in the daily operations of her business. Initially, his involvement was as agreed, providing strategic advice and helping navigate the bigger business deals. But gradually, Sarah noticed a shift in his engagement. He started suggesting changes not just in operations, but also in product design, marketing strategies, and even in hiring decisions. What began as suggestions soon took on the tone of directives. At first, Sarah tried to view these changes positively. After all, Mr. Carlton had a wealth of experience and had shown a keen insight into the market. But as his input became more frequent and more detailed, she began to feel as if her authority was being undercut. Key decisions that she would have made now required his approval, and several times his views diverged significantly from her own. The realization began to dawn on Sarah that Mr. Carlton was seeing her business not just as an investment, but as an extension of his own empire. This encroachment became starkly evident in meetings where Mr. Carlton would speak on behalf of the company without prior discussion with her. His network was vast, and his personality dominant. Soon, Sarah found that suppliers and clients who previously engaged directly with her were now deferring to him. It was unsettling to see her role being slowly eclipsed by her investor, whose stake, though supposedly minor, carried a weight she hadn't foreseen. Sarah's discomfort grew as she witnessed her original mission and vision being subtly redirected towards Mr. Carlton's business philosophy. Innovations she had planned were put on hold for projects he favored, and the brand identity she had carefully cultivated began to morph into something she barely recognized. The balance of power had shifted, and she felt more like an employee in her own company than the founder. The tension reached a tipping point during a product launch planning session. Mr. Carlton proposed a new product line that diverged completely from the company's core offerings. It was a lucrative idea, but one that strayed far from the brand's ethos and consumer base. Sarah objected, presenting data to support her stance, but Mr. Carlton's response was dismissive. He argued that the company needed to diversify to compete, disregarding her concerns about brand coherence and customer loyalty. Feeling sidelined, Sarah left the meeting with a heavy heart, her mind racing with questions about the future of her business. The partnership that had seemed like a dream was turning into a scenario she dreaded, where she was losing control over the company she had built from the ground up. The realization that her autonomy was slipping away left her feeling betrayed and trapped. What had started as a partnership had morphed into a takeover, and she felt powerless to steer her own company's destiny. That night, as she reflected on the path her business had taken, Sarah knew she had to make a decision. The growth and success brought on by Mr. Carlton's involvement were undeniable, but the cost to her independence and original vision was too great. She faced a dilemma: continue with the partnership and the resources it brought, risking further erosion of her control, or attempt to regain her independence, potentially sacrificing the rapid growth her company was experiencing. As she weighed her options, the core of her entrepreneurial spirit, a deep-seated desire for freedom and the drive to realize her own vision, reasserted itself. Sarah realized that the terms of her partnership needed reevaluation. She needed to find a way to restore the balance, to return to the roots of her business while still keeping the doors open to the growth opportunities Mr. Carlton's support provided. The challenge was immense, but Sarah knew that the future of her business and her peace of mind depended on reclaiming the helm of her venture. Sarah's realization that the contract she had signed wasn't just a lifeline, but a leash changed everything. It dawned on her one evening while reviewing the monthly performance reports. The figures on the page showed growth and success, yet the control she had over her own company had diminished significantly. The detailed clauses of the contract, once seen as formalities, now loomed over every decision she made. Each line of the fine print seemed to tighten Mr. Carlton's grip on her business, pulling the reins on her independence and steering her away from the entrepreneurial spirit with which she had founded her company. Feeling cornered and desperate to regain some semblance of control, Sarah decided it was time to confront Mr. Carlton. She requested a meeting under the guise of discussing new strategic directions, but her true intention was to renegotiate the terms that were slowly suffocating her autonomy. During the meeting, Sarah laid out her concerns candidly, expressing how the current arrangement was stifling her creative and operational control. She hoped to appeal to the partnership's original spirit of mutual benefit and growth. However, Mr. Carlton's response was not as understanding or flexible as she had hoped. He reminded her, in no uncertain terms, that the contract was legally binding and that the clauses she now contested were standard for the level of investment he had made. His tone was firm, and the finality in his voice left no room for negotiation. He advised her to focus on executing her role within the agreed parameters, rather than challenging the structure that had been put in place. The conversation ended with Mr. Carlton reasserting his position, and Sarah leaving the room feeling more powerless than before. The strain of this professional deadlock began to seep into Sarah's personal life. At home, conversations with Tom, once filled with shared dreams and plans for the future, now turned into discussions about financial liabilities, legal strategies, and the looming threat of losing control over the business they both cherished. Tom, caught between his loyalty to his boss, Mr. Carlton, and his allegiance to his wife, found himself in a difficult position. While he understood Sarah's distress, he also recognized the stability and opportunities Mr. Carlton's partnership brought to their lives. Sarah felt increasingly isolated as she grappled with her professional challenges and the growing tensions at home. The situation put a strain on their marriage, with each discussion about the business ending in frustration or silence. Sarah missed the days when her biggest worries were about product lines or marketing strategies, not legal battles and power struggles. The fallout from the business deal began to affect Sarah's well-being. She found herself unable to sleep, her thoughts consumed by scenarios of what might happen if she continued to push against Mr. Carlton's authority. She worried about the potential financial ruin if she decided to break the contract and the impact it would have on her employees, many of whom had become like family over the years. The business had grown under Mr. Carlton's investment, but so had Sarah's sense of entrapment, making her question whether the initial success was worth the cost to her freedom and happiness. Feeling betrayed by a deal she once celebrated, Sarah started to regret ever accepting Mr. Carlton's offer. The promise of accelerated growth and financial support had blinded her to the realities of such a partnership. Now, with every business decision, she felt the pang of regret for not having scrutinized the contract more thoroughly, for not having anticipated the shift in control, and for allowing her ambition to cloud her judgment. This regret motivated Sarah to seek legal counsel, not to immediately dissolve the partnership, but to explore any possible loopholes or strategies that could restore her authority over her business. She spent her days combing through legal texts and consultation notes, clinging to the hope that there might be a way out. Each small legal victory in understanding her position gave her the strength to continue fighting. not just for her business, but for the principle that no success was worth sacrificing her autonomy and integrity. Through this tumultuous time, Sarah learned the harsh truth about mixing business with personal aspirations without clear boundaries. She vowed to never again enter into an agreement without fully understanding every implication and potential outcome. This ordeal was far from over, but Sarah was determined to reclaim her life's work and ensure that her future business endeavors would align with her values and vision. Her fight to regain control was just beginning, but she was ready to face whatever challenges came her way with a newfound resilience and clarity. The path to regaining control over her business began with a strategic, albeit challenging, decision to reevaluate the legal framework binding her and Mr. Carlton. Armed with a newfound resolve and the insights gathered from extensive legal consultations, Sarah meticulously prepared for what would be a defining confrontation. She spent days reviewing every detail of the agreement, understanding each clause that had initially slipped past her scrutiny, and outlining her position and arguments. Sarah realized the importance of entering the negotiation not as a subordinate asking for leniency, but as an equal partner advocating for her rightful place in the management of her company. She prepared a comprehensive presentation, highlighting the contributions her leadership had made to the company's success, the value of her original vision, and the detrimental effects of the current power imbalance on the business's potential. This preparation was not just about legal rights, but also about asserting her value and vision. As the day of the meeting arrived, Sarah felt a mixture of nerves and determination. The stakes were incredibly high, not just for her business, but for her personal sense of integrity and autonomy. She met with Mr. Carlton in the same office where they had signed the initial agreement, bringing a sense of symmetry to the occasion. The meeting was intense, with Sarah laying out her points clearly and Mr. Carlton initially resisting the proposed changes. However, Sarah's preparation and her clear articulation of the issues made it hard for him to dismiss her concerns. After hours of discussion, where negotiations teetered between stiff resistance and cautious concessions, a new agreement began to take shape. This revised contract was more balanced, reducing Mr. Carlton's control and restoring the operational autonomy Sarah had lost. It was a testament to her resilience and the validity of her arguments that Mr. Carlton agreed to these terms. He recognized not only the legal points she raised, but also the passion and commitment she brought to her work, elements that were crucial to the continued growth and success of the business. The renegotiation was more than just a legal victory for Sarah. It was a personal reclaiming of her space and role within her company. It reinforced her belief in the importance of understanding every facet of a business deal and reaffirmed her confidence in her ability to lead her company according to her original vision. The experience had been harrowing but ultimately enlightening, teaching her invaluable lessons about the complexities of business partnerships. With her business and personal life finally back on a stable path, Sarah took the time to reflect on the journey she had undergone. The ordeal with Mr. Carlton had exposed vulnerabilities in her understanding of business contracts and personal boundaries, but it had also ignited a fierce determination within her to never find herself in such a position again. She recognized the importance of thorough due diligence and the need to maintain clear boundaries in all professional relationships. The lessons learned from this chapter of her life extended beyond business. They touched on aspects of personal growth, resilience, and the understanding that while external support could be valuable, the core strength of a business, or any endeavor, must come from within. Sarah's journey through the complexities of this business challenge had ultimately reinforced her resolve to be a proactive, informed, and assertive leader. Now, with her autonomy restored and a renewed confidence in her direction, Sarah looked forward to the future with optimism. She was more equipped than ever to navigate the complexities of the business world, backed by a solid understanding of her rights and a clear vision for her company. The experience had been difficult, but it had prepared her well for the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. She knew that no matter what the future held, she was now better prepared to handle it, ensuring that her business thrived while reflecting her values and goals. This challenging phase of her life had closed with valuable insights and reinforced a key message. True empowerment comes from understanding one's worth and relentlessly advocating for it, no matter the opposition. Sarah embraced this message as she moved forward, ready to tackle new challenges with a stronger, clearer perspective.